mine all right there? It's not yours? Yeah, I'm going to start mine now.
Please take in your seats. Billy, is everybody outside? The colonels, for those of you that don't know, Colonel Chris is attending his third Fireside with the colonels. So we're very honoured to have him. He's travelled all the way from America. He's done his tour as you have noticed on the videos YouTube he sent out. So to you, Chris, a very warm welcome from all of us here in Uppington. It's good to see you. You follow us, and it's nice to have this evening with you. I just want to share something with you all that happened today before I hand over to Wynand. I had the honour of taking Chris to Rugby's falls. So on arrival, there's a lot of mist, not steam, mist, and it looked nice. It was calming, but there's a lot of mist. Now, for those of you that know Rugby's, the car park, the whole mist is covering the whole car park. So we parked underneath the carport where the caravan stopped. That's how far the mist came over. So getting out the car, Chris says to me, he didn't bring a raincoat, but would I mind taking his passport? Because he didn't want to get wet. So I put the passport in my pocket. The whole time we're walking, I'm thinking, what am I going to do with this passport? So we do our bit, we go to the restaurant, and there's people that recognize Chris, but they don't say anything, they just look at him.
Too shy.
They're probably too shy to come up to Chris. And then we do our rounds outside, and we go to the furthest point, closest to the sea. That was the only place, the last point, that we could stand and take good pictures of the falls. Coming back, we spoke about the people not wanting to greet because of the probably group pressure in the restaurant. But then there's a couple, two men and two wives that greeted Chris. They recognized him, we had a good chat, and we did a photo shoot there. But going back to the car, I'm still thinking, what am I going to do with this passport? Because it's in my pocket. So Chris asked me, oh Rob, may I have my passport please? So then I said to Chris, they're not giving back to you. And he said to me, this is not time to be funny with me now. His exact words were this is nowhere near funny. So he had a bit of a situation there, but it was fine. We all burst out laughing, but it was nice. It was nice. Chris, welcome. And then we'll hand you over to Wynand. Wynand? Thank you.
Dankie Rob, je element dat je kan Engels praten slag. Yes, you know, we used to have in the military in South Africa 1 month of Afrikaans and 1 month of English.
Okay.
This is unfortunately the Afrikaans month, and that's the
Let's see how it goes.
But okay. Chris, welcome back to Uppington. We are a much smaller group tonight than we used. I think the other time we were about 250 people. They had the casino.
Maybe that's why it's 250, because we're at the casino.
Yeah, that's why we've got a lot. But anyway, welcome to each and every one of you that is here tonight. There's Swanis as well. Saw his face now for the first time here. But guys from Namibia, there's people from Richards Bay, there's people who drove up from Cape Town to attend tonight. Of course, Chris came from the United States, but not for our function alone. He traveled a bit around the country. But I want to mention a special person here tonight, and that's Hans Lowe. Hans Lowe is sitting there in the back. Hans, just stand up quickly. Myself and Hans got a history. Dankie Hans, jy kan maar weer sit. Staan op sit, I don't know,
Just like the army.
Yeah. So 'n bietjie agtergrond, Hans was die eerste, he was the very first color to successfully pass the selection and training of the special forces. And he became a member of 1 recce and 5 recce, successfully so. He was shot a couple of times there, his legs are not as good as it used to be, but we got a connection, all our old soldiers. So just a hand of welcome to Chris and to Hans tonight here. Apparently Hans is coming to see me tomorrow. He said I must behave, so at a stage. But guys, SPB has gone through quite a bit of development since the previous time that we had a meeting with Chris. The last Fireside with the colonels was in Pretoria, which Rob had organized. And which was also a very good function, over 200 people present that night. But then we went through a period, a time period where I told Chris, when he comes to South Africa, I told him, listen Chris, it's not a good time for us. We have to be able to get through our problems first, which was a natural thing that flows out of the division that came between us and the Zeelanders. So we have grown tremendously. We have planned a lot. A week and a half ago we were here in this very same room with the top structure of SBB plan for whatever situation might arise from the situation in South Africa. We must be prepared. But there's interesting things happening around the world, and there's a lot of different perspectives on what is going on. I want to say something which Tony, the brain senior, Tony turned 80 a year ago, but he's always writing very interesting articles, and he posted it on Facebook. He said he was a disheartened person in the beginning of January of 2025. He said it was extremely difficult to have a vision of what is going to happen in 2025. Which is of course for all of us a bit of a struggle, and you must excuse my English and especially my pronunciation, but normally I only speak English in self-defense, as most of you guys know, you know. But Tony said, in his lifetime, he could never have predicted that one man in the world has turned the world on its head, and that's Donald Trump. We will be talking about him a little bit because I want to get Chris's perspective on that as well. But Donald Trump, in a certain sense, created a lot of hope for many South Africans. But Chris also asked me, and I agree with him, that we are not going to talk tonight about the immigration proposals that was given to Afrikaners by Donald Trump. We are not going to talk about it tonight because everybody wants to know, and he's now already how many weeks in South Africa?
Almost a month.
Almost a month. And everywhere people is asking the same questions. While everything is on YouTube, everything is on the website of the United States Embassy in Pretoria. So you can just go and Google the Embassy of the United States if it is in the back of your mind that you want to immigrate to the United States with refugee status.
Or you can just go watch my videos.
Yeah, well, that's it. The point is, we are going to talk tonight about several subjects, trying to explain, makes you better understand. There is a system by which I want you to pose your questions tonight. If you do have a question, send me a note. Give it to Art and send it to him. He will give it to me. You should have sit that side, not cross in front of the people. But anyway, send a note with your question, your name and the question. Then I will handle the question so that we don't have a lengthy discussion on certain things, because people are interesting things. Because I've found out many times that she would ask me a question, and 10 minutes later he asked me exactly the same question, because he didn't listen at the moment when she was asking. So let's get past that problem that we have. We at SBB, of course, our purpose is to prepare ourselves in a worst case scenario, as I called it, the Armageddon situation, where all else failed in South Africa. Then we must be able to protect ourselves, and we cannot sit and wait until it is too late, and we cannot prepare ourselves anymore to speak from a unified voice, or with a unified voice, and be able to protect each other. So it's very important to listen to the geopolitics, not only of South Africa, because there's a lot of people who was angry with me and said on the YouTube channel, why are you talking about Donald Trump? He's not going to change everything or anything. He's just another American president who is being controlled by the deep state. Okay? Why do you talk about Putin? You are a Putinaner. I talk about Putin because his decisions, Donald Trump's decisions, what is happening in Pakistan and India at the moment, because just yesterday a new war broke out between two nuclear superpowers, which is Pakistan and India. And don't think India and Pakistan is small countries. They are extremely large and extremely powerful. I think the Indian army rated about under the top 5 militaries in the world currently. So it's not a Mickey Mouse situation. We see the situation in the Middle East developing at a tremendous rate. It's going to have an influence on us. It is things that happens or occur in the world that eventually will put us in a position where things can get out of hand. If a world war breaks out, and the chances are fairly good. If you look at Keir Starmer in Britain and you look at Macron in France, who are hell-bent on sending troops to Ukraine, if we go into a world war, there's no more money for the South African government, for the ANC to plunder, or to govern, or to feed the people, or keep SASA going. Where are we going to get certain things? We are so used to going to the pharmacy and all the medicines are there, or going to the supermarket and all the things are there. What if all of a sudden, because of what is happening in Europe or elsewhere in the world, the detrimental effect that it will have on our daily lives might just be the key, the spark that puts us over the cliff. And when the people get angry in Africa, they always do it in the same way. Nothing stands in their way. If they decide this is what they are going to do, that they are going to protest, they are going to plunder, they will do it. And even if the organizer says, well, we are not going to plunder, the people at the back hasn't been told, so they will plunder. And that's why I think it is so important that a guy like Chris, who is looking from the outside into South Africa and who reports on things in South Africa and who knows more about South African politics than maybe all of us sitting here tonight. Which is a tremendous feat. And that's why it's important to listen carefully at what he is seeing. He's also been talking with everybody, no matter who it is, except Malema. He refused. I'm a bit sad, you know, because I've been hearing rumors that there's a guys who now want to form a new party, the Economic Freedom Front. Plus. I couldn't make one Pascal, sorry. I have to mention that one. So, we are facing an uphill battle ahead. But we will succeed as long as we are aware, if we use our heads, if we use our God-given brains. But it's actually another word that I was looking for, but you know, my English becomes better later in the evening. When I was farming in Angola, I always said, my Portuguese is fluent after the bottle of whiskey. So maybe tonight we will get fluent. Chris, before we continue, thank you very much for visiting here. And I got a present for you, 2 presents in fact. The first one, the last time we gave you a nice leather bag, you remember?
Yes, and it was stolen.
No, I got it back.
Oh, you got it
I got it back, yeah.
Okay.
No, I got
So
it back.
tonight I'm going to give you a bottle of wine to put back into that bag because they didn't return the wine that was in the bag.
Yeah, I got the one.
Oh,
I got it all back.
now
But
you
I'll take this one too.
No, they stole all of it, and they took it down to the creek as they were taking the televisions and everything from my friend's house. And I think they looked down and they saw Sightlanders on there, and they saw Colonel Wyatt, and they just abandoned it. So they went looking, they found the satchel with all the wine in it.
Now another thing is Clive Street from the Greek Rugby Union. Sien you Greek jersey, rugby jersey. Now he didn't know it. I also support the Greek
But that's not for you.
for many years, but I'll wait my turn until I receive. So,
Oh my goodness.
and they are sponsored by 6 Gun, which is a spice for bribeless. It's very important. That was because they will win this year.
I've actually long in Curry Cup been a Griquas fan because my argument has always been anyone that's brave enough to play rugby on concrete in Kimberley deserves your support. You've seen the pitch, yes? Anyway.
Thank you.
Is that all right? Okay.
Yeah, it's only a Suzuki one, but let's leave it as it is. Chris, have a seat.
Okay.
Ik is jaloers. Ik heb nog nooit een Greek Rugby gehad. You know what? Many years ago, there was 13 Greek players in the Springbok team. 13 out of 15 came from Greek was. That is at the time of Versagi, Amazon's mannen, yeah. And tremendous stories, and as a kid I used to hang out in the club, Amazon Club. My brother-in-law used to play rugby for them. And Amazon, for years, held the world record for the largest score against another team ever. All Greek players. So it's tremendous. It's Piet Versagi. Wie van jullie keer onthou vir Piet Versace? Oh ja, is 'n klomp mense wat. I almost say a very ugly word.
What's that Afrikaans?
Yeah.
Also Markie Droog.
He was also there, yes, same time. But I want to kick off our discussion tonight. Firstly, very glad that you are here again and that we can talk, chat. And when you gave your passport to Rob, it was actually a risk because he could have pushed you. And if you go into that over, he will pick you up at the Wanyamoot where you are surfing.
I think I'll be surfing the whole way if you saw the river today.
And maybe he wanted to steal your identity. Rob, where are you?
He did say something about moving to America. Maybe that's what passports for.
So all we have to check now is whether your photo is...
It's still in the passport.
But anyway, Chris, when we start having our program, your program actually, your YouTube program, Fireside with the Colonels, which was your initiative, and we started way back, I think it must be 5 years or something.
4
now.
years,
It's a very long time that we have been chatting. But in 2020, after Biden was elected the president, that very first time we talked again, I said to you something. Sorry for reminding you, because I like reminding you about it. I said to him, if I were your enemy now, I would have attacked you. Because you got now the weakest government that you ever had in the history. And of all the DEI, you know what that is, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusiveness. I finally got it right tonight. It must be what's in the glass. But anyway, you was quite surprised because I mentioned it. And afterwards we had talked a lot, many discussions. And then something momentous happened last year with the election on the 5th of November, but even more momentous on the 20th of January this year when he was, and within the first couple of hours, he signed the first lot of executive orders. Now, what I want to know is, how did you guys as Americans experience this dramatic turnaround of the leader of the free world?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question, Bennett, because yesterday someone was asking me a question. He said, no, actually, this Gareth Cliff asked me, he said, where is Joe Biden? We haven't heard a single news story about him since he left president. I mean, no one knows where he's at. And frankly, I think most of us are pretty happy about that.
He's on the beach.
He's on the beach. With corn pop? Corn pop. He's a tough dude, corn pop. No, it's, we experienced it, many of us, a sense of jubilation. An absolute jubilation. I mean, you know, America was sliding in the same direction that South Africa has been headed for many years. You know, you had fees must fall, all this other nonsense, this culture of expectation and entitlement, which had also become part of American society. And the DEI was part of that. You know, the expectation that people get a position, a job, a promotion based on their skin color or their ethnic origin or their sexual orientation or something like that. And frankly, much of America had a sigh of relief. You know, many of us now say that we saved our country on November 5th. And we're now saying that maybe we might have saved the world as well. So there are, of course, people on the other side of the aisle who are still upset, but they're actually a minority. A lot of people who vote Democrat are actually pretty happy that Trump is president. Many of them won't admit it in public, but he's done some amazing things. Never in history has any president ever moved with such alacrity, with such speed, all the things he's done. You know, when this started, I said this to a few folks, you know, we may have talked about this. I said that it's almost as if Trump had a playbook, and he's got every play pre-scheduled, And so day one, I'm going to sign this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to announce this. Day two, turn the page, this is what we're going to do. Day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. And a lot of it, quite frankly, I think honestly, was substantive, but some of it was done just to confuse the press and the political left, to make them chase after things that were not important and waste their money on lawyers suing him on things that don't matter, while the things that mattered got put in place. The short answer to your question, Bennett, is that a lot of America has had a deep sigh of, of joy. We're quite happy that Trump is elected. And a lot of people that don't like him actually they're okay right now. Although the media is trying to paint a narrative once again. They're running things like the economy is faltering, but they offer no data. And the only data, I saw a Wall Street Journal article this week in which they said America's economy is faltering, we're going to go into recession, but then they quoted good housing statistics which are higher than the last 4 years, which is a major driver of the economy. So their argument doesn't make any sense. You can see the media's already starting to try to turn this stuff. But Donald Trump is not the same person we knew in 2016. He's not the same person in 2020. This man has survived 2 known assassination attempts, including having been shot in the head. And yes, the ear counts as part of your head. So, and we talked about this yesterday. Can you imagine? Many of us in the room have come under fire. We know what it's like to be shot at, for mortar rounds to explode around us, our lives to be in jeopardy, our teammates' lives in jeopardy. We've reacted. We may not have known the first time we were baptized by fire. Might have been afraid of what was going to happen. Do I have the courage to do what I'm supposed to do under fire? But we do know. We're battle tested. But Trump was never battle tested. He's a rich guy that is a businessman. He got shot in the head. What did he do? He pushed the Secret Service off him, 78 years old. He gets up and screams, fight, fight, fight. And that's what America's doing now. We're fighting for America, and I think for the world. Yeah, well, that went over like a lead balloon. Nice, there's a sad crowd here. I thought you'd be excited to hear that.
But if you look at the press, when will they realize that the time is up?
I don't know. Maybe I could ask Adrian Basson about that from News 24. He might know.
A good answer on that. Yeah, I think that the Donald Trump situation has perhaps saved the world. If we look at the model of the United States currently, the situation and how things are changing and progressing, it's completely the opposite of what used to be under Joe Biden. And I see and I notice that there are some people that is getting very impatient. But why is there no arrest being made? Because there's an expectation under the Americans that whoever stole the election, whoever was involved with Epstein Island or with P. Diddy, it's a tough Diddy.
P. Diddy. It's Puff Daddy, P. Diddy. He goes by both.
Yeah. I was like it out.
Oh.
But anyway, they are now calling seriously that they want to see action. And today I noticed something, that they dropped another bunch of Epstein files. And the one name that is prominent right through all the documentation is the Clintons. Do you think that the current administration under Donald Trump will go as far as arrest previous people like the Clintons, maybe Obama even? What is your realization? What is the expectation and what can the people what might happen?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think that Trump will have the Justice Department go after the Clintons. I think that's probably not going to happen. But I wouldn't be surprised to see people in the previous administration, the Biden administration, who were responsible for continuous violations of the Constitution. I mean, we have tech companies like Facebook and others who colluded with the federal government. So, our Constitution protects us from the government. That's why we have a Constitution. It protects our rights. We have God-given rights. They're natural rights. Freedom of assembly, freedom of worship, freedom of speech. Those are given to us by nature and God. They're not granted to you by government. Governments can't take that from you. That's our perspective of the world. And the government is prohibited from trying to take those rights away under our Constitution. The First Amendment protects those rights. But the government under Biden used proxies to silence their opponents, like me. So I was silenced on YouTube because they falsely took down my channel because that's what the government wanted. And we actually have the evidence because Elon Musk released what happened on Twitter, how the government, all these agencies, including the White House, told tech companies to silence people who were speaking out against things when they're exercising their constitutional right. I do believe the Trump administration will begin pursuing those government officials and prosecuting them. But there's a lot going on now, and that's probably being built in the background by mid-level Justice Department officials. But I don't think we're going to see anything, with the Epstein as far as Obama or Clinton or something like that. The last time Trump didn't even pursue Hillary Clinton when he knew that she stole classified information, top secret classified information, and recklessly left it on unclassified servers and things like that. So he never pursued that. The other thing about this too is that Joe Biden supposedly signed a whole bunch of pardons, executive pardons, just before he left office. The argument is that he never signed them. It was done by a computer, an auto pen. If in fact that's the case, it's unprecedented in American history, and it raised the question whether even legitimate parties did even know that he did it. I think that the Trump administration at some point during this first term will seek to go through the courts and overturn those, if not to prosecute, at least to make them wet their nappies and scare the bejesus out of them. I think that's what's going to happen. But there are so many people committed so many crimes against the American people and against the world that going after all of them would be a full-time job. And right now, we've got to get trade sorted out. We've got to sort Gaza, Ukraine, all those other places.
But if I look at the role that the USAID, very misleading because it's USAID, International Development, and it's not actually United States aid, USAID. But they have pictured it very nicely that it looks as if it's aid that is going out to the world, and of course the media went crazy about that when that financing was stopped. And we see now what a big role they have played in various situations throughout the world and what was happening. Even in South Africa, the role of USAID. And I actually forgot what I wanted to ask you about the USAID. But the role that was played through the CIA in various departments to influence and actually create wars. Now, in the previous administration in the United States, they focused on revolutions, change the government so that we can put a pro-American government into place, the so-called Maidan revolutions, that type of thing. And now we are sitting with a person like Donald Trump who said, well, the attitude is, and what I read out of it, he's using economics, he's using money to force governments to fall in line with them. And they had to get rid of USAID to be able to do that, to put pressure on a country like South Africa, which did not follow the foreign affairs lines or in line with that of the foreign policy of the United States. Your idea of that?
Yeah, so USAID, the United States Agency for International Development, was created by Kennedy back in the 1960s. The idea was to help developing countries develop. And in its early history, USAID was full of engineers and botanists and agronomists and specialists who actually went out to places like Latin America and Africa where they actually implemented programs and tried to do development. But we made some big mistakes. The big mistakes were that we gave money to African governments. That was a mistake. A lot of it got looted and misused over the decades. So we learned a lesson, and by the 1990s, USAID had changed its focus. I kind of sarcastically call them contracting officers, because much of what they do is they're the middleman to funnel money to non-government organizations or to corporations to do the projects. We stopped giving it to African governments because it kept disappearing and started following the money chain ourselves. I think Trump wanted to get rid of USAID or shut it down because he thought it was a big unnecessary expense. The argument with USAID, what does America get from it? I mean, that's the real question. Why do we give all this money to these countries? What do we get for it? I mean, are we just that generous? Well, nobody's that generous. We want something. We want goodwill, and we want access. We also want countries to develop. And we're not getting any of that. We're getting rubbished by the likes of the government in South Africa, doing things contrary to our national interests while we give $500 million a year to fight HIV and gender-based violence and promote trade here. And what do we get? We get insulted, and we get an ambassador who comes to America and calls our president the leader of a global white supremacist movement, and Americans racist. I mean, that's beyond the pale. So that's one, I mean, that wasn't tied to why USAID was shut down, but that's an example of the sort of thing that happens to America, and people just spit in our face. We give billions and billions and billions around the world every year to help people, and this is the response we get. And I think that Trump is a little tired of people being ungrateful as part of it, but also he was trying to cut some expenses and also curb the power of the administrative state. USAID was a very powerful agency, and there's a history, recent history between USAID and the State Department that goes back to Bush. USAID used to be an independent agency, like the State Department and like the Department of Defense, but President Bush, the second one, George Jr., he put USAID under the State Department around 2005, 2006, and there's been tremendous friction and lots of challenges of the two working together. And I know, because I worked in embassies across Africa, as this was unfolding and as it was very painful. And so I think President Trump thinks we're not getting much out of USAID for the United States, so what's the point? So if there's no juice to the squeeze, why are you squeezing? And I think that's a big part of why he's done it. But the power of the bureaucracy is part of it too. His first term, the bureaucracy undermined President Trump. There was treasonous conduct committed by people in multiple agencies. Not everyone, I mean, but there were people that were doing this. Slow-rolling executive actions, executive orders, slow-rolling the rule of law, undermining the presidency. And, we have a bureaucracy that couldn't be fired. They're there, you can't get rid of them, they're permanent. So it was a permanent ruling political class that wasn't elected. And President Trump saw them as a threat to the executive branch and to the legislative branch. So he's dismembering it. And that's part of what's going on. USAID is part of that. So I think that all plays a role in his thinking. But a lot of people say he's doing it just to cut expenses. Folks, the United States government spends $7.4 trillion per year. That's more than almost every country in the world. 150 countries have less GDP than what my government spends on itself. That's just the national government. Then we got state, county, municipal governments. And so the real savings, if we're going to get savings, will come from Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So while he's trying to save money, that's not the primary focus.
But you are having the world record with the oldest person, 350 years.
Oh, for Social Security?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of them. People live long in America. We don't drink Pepsi, we drink Coca-Cola, that's why.
President Elon Musk?
He's from South Africa.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were asking. What about you?
no, I found him quite a bit of a spark there. Nice to see him. He's moving almost abnormally, oftenly with Donald Trump.
They're almost like, bros, like bros, They really are.
Whenever you see a photo, Elon is somewhere there, and then that first day when he came on the stage, I think it was in Butler the second time.
Yes, when he went back.
When he started jumping like a kid.
And his shirt came up, I remember that.
But it's a fresh breeze.
Yes.
And the other thing before I continue is we've seen a very young cabinet. J.D. Vance, about 40, Peter Exit,
38 or 40. Very
Yes,
young.
same. Some of them, okay, they,
Tulsi Gabbard is young?
yes,
yeah.
all of them, except Robbie Kennedy. Kennedy.
Oh, yeah, Bobby Kennedy Jr., yeah,
Yes.
he's like 1,000 years old, yeah.
But
Like Trump.
at least the two of them can retire afterwards and they can carry on with their life. But they are building a nice continuity at present for the future. And that is exciting. So I think the Democratic Party has destroyed itself. And is still busy destroying it. But still the press are supporting them. And still the press is saying, Donald Trump said, will stop the war in Ukraine on day one. But even I, sitting here in Uppington, I don't think anybody else in the world know of the place Uppington.
I think some Namibians know, some Namibians know.
Yeah, but I realized very quickly it's impossible to stop it in one day because it has continued for too long. The war is been going on too long, and for a full 3 years since the outbreak of the war, the United States, not the president, not the foreign secretary, what's his name?
Marco Rubio.
No, the old one.
Oh, the old one. Who was it? Oh,
You must say Admiral.
No, he wasn't there.
Kirby.
Oh, Kirby wasn't a secretary, no, he was just a spokesperson. He's just a
Who's
spokesperson.
the other guy?
Anthony.
Blinken.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Blinken and I, that's how I
Yeah.
remember him, yeah.
But anyway, they have never spoken to Putin or anybody
No,
in the department.
they never tried
just
to.
ignore it.
Yeah.
And now the same press were promoted, that side almost promoted a war with Russia, is now saying, Donald Trump can't stop the war. He said he will stop it in one day. It's an impossibility at this stage. We have talked about that war and what is happening. Let's touch quickly onto that Ukraine war. Latest impressions. Where are we going? Will Donald Trump, I mean that's a difficult question. Do you think Donald Trump will have success or a part of success, or will he in reality withdraw himself out of the situation, but then he will have to withdraw also from NATO? What's your thoughts on that situation?
All right, so before I answer that, let me go back to the point about ending on day one. So Donald Trump is prone to hyperbole. He's bombastic. He'll say things to make a point. If you take him literally, you're going to get it wrong. Trump saying he'd end the war on day one was hyperbole. What he meant is he could have handled this. Basically, it could resolve. But the problem, as you said, is it's drug on for 3 years. Had Trump been there, he never would have started. And even if it had started, he could have ended very quickly by bringing these folks to the table. He does this a lot. He uses hyperbole, and the press take him literally. The one thing that you should take Trump literally on is when he makes a promise. And on his promises, he's following through. He promised to put tariffs in place, and I listened. I voted on November 5th for Trump. And on November 7th, I ordered my new laptop before the price doubled. And now it costs twice as much because he followed through on his promise with tariffs. But he's subject to hyperbole. He does that, and they stretch it to ridiculous outcomes. So, thoughts on Ukraine. It's pretty clear that neither Volodymyr Zelensky or Vladimir Putin want to end the war. They're both warmongers. There aren't enough Ukrainians and Russians that can die on their behalf to make them wealthy and keep their position secure. I find both to be reprehensible human beings, and the loss of life for everyone is really sad. When this thing broke out in 2022, I was in Florida. I just arrived to cover the Conservative Political Action Convention in Orlando, Florida. And I got to my hotel room late at night because my flight was delayed. It was Florida, so it was like Durban, humid, and I was sweaty. So I wanted to take a shower. I opened my laptop up, turned it on, connected to the Wi-Fi, turned the television on to go hop in the shower, and the war had just started. That night I went live, which was like 2 o'clock in the morning for me. It was daytime for you folks. and I was on for about 3 hours, and we had thousands of people tune in. And the question I was asked was, how long will this war last? And at that time, knowing the players, Zelensky and Putin, and why, in my view, they were fighting or going to fight, I said a minimum of 3 to 5 years. That's the day that it started. And here we are, 3 years later plus, and it's still going with no end in sight. Can Trump end the war? I think it's challenging because a lot of the tools that Trump could use, Biden has already used to no effect. And the reason the tools haven't worked for the U.S. is that Putin was clever. He went to Beijing before he commenced operations and got promises for them to buy iron ore and wood, timber, coal, petroleum, and pay in hard currency so that the Russians had hard currency. So that's one thing that's been helping them keep their economy from collapsing while they've been cut out of the international system. So that's a major tool that Trump doesn't have at his disposal, and Russia has survived this long. So he's going to have to be very creative. But what I can say is I think it's a myth that Trump is a big friend of Putin. He might respect him. I don't know. I don't think that may be the case. But what I think the case is here is that Trump has had enough of this war. He's had enough. Now, Trump is the only president in my lifetime that's ended wars. Every president in my lifetime has started a war. No, well, I guess Nixon ended wars, but he expanded it greatly before he ended it. I was a kid. But they all start wars. Trump ended the wars. Trump ended ISIS in 4 months after Obama and his naive, childish foreign policy festered and created that organization and led to horrific deaths for hundreds of thousands of people. He ended ISIS. He ended the war in Iraq. He ended the war in Afghanistan, and then Joe Biden lied about it and said we were still in war when we weren't. We had no combat operations going on in Afghanistan for 18 months. Trump ends wars, and he wants to end this war. I don't know how he's going to do it, but I'm confident that if anybody can do it, it's Donald Trump, and I hope he gets it done soon.
Yeah, because if we don't succeed, we might face disaster.
There's a nuclear power involved here.
Yeah.
And we got idiot European countries trying to provoke and anger him.
But listening to you now, Chris, he's ending wars. Why the support for the Middle East? The counter Iran attitude, and then also the huge support for the Israelis while he's trying to make peace. On the other side, he allowed Israel to do certain things, or that's the impression that we get. Now, what he said a couple of days ago, maybe it was yesterday, day before yesterday, he said, let's send food to Gaza, which was unexpected. He's saying things to provoke people so that they must react, because nobody was interested in helping in Gaza. I don't think any other Arab country want the Palestinians. They don't want them. Even Egypt put up military forces to keep the Palestinians out of the Sinai Desert. Why? It is where it's sometimes difficult to place what is where. But then Donald Trump also said he will clear Gaza and then build the sort of a super holiday resort there. And all of a sudden there was 3 nations who is reacting, okay, we got this plan, or we got this plan, we cannot allow Donald Trump to build casinos. That was an effective way of getting, say, local Middle East countries involved.
100%. And another thing is that, we did talk about this. Donald Trump talked about buying Greenland in his last administration, but there was a lot of distraction with the fake Russian collusion narrative and the fake, the impeachment hearings that took place. So it kind of died away. But he's back now. I'm going to buy Greenland. And they all laugh at him. He said, fine, I'll invade and occupy it. I mean, there's only 30,000 to 40,000 people there. So they're, whoa, this is crazy. What are you doing talking about doing that? Well, the upshot of that, just like the casino thing, to get people start working towards peace, is suddenly, a few weeks ago, Denmark announced, after decades of failing at their obligation to patrol the Arctic Sea, because they control Greenland, it's one of their territories. Greenland announced the expenditure of $939 million, about 16 billion rand, to purchase 3 frigates and have a maritime base in northern Greenland to patrol the Arctic Sea. Funny how that happened after Trump threatened to invade, and that's kind of goes along those lines. It's yeah, the Middle East thing is so. First of all, we got to go back. When I say Trump ends wars, he also comes up with peace agreements. The most historic and effective peace agreement in the history of the Middle East was the Abraham Accords, negotiated by his son-in-law, and Trump got them to sign it. The outcome of the Abraham Accords is that Morocco renewed and restored diplomatic relations with Israel, which had been suspended for years. In addition to that, Sudan established diplomatic relations with Israel.
And Saudi Arabia.
And Saudi Arabia. That's a state that was diametrically opposed. Donald Trump brought peace to the Middle East. Joe Biden comes in office, and Hamas uses money funneled into that area to supposedly feed people and house people, to build tunnels, to launch a war, and to kill 1,200 people. By the way, they weren't just Israelis. People forget that. Maybe not this audience, but Jews, Christians, Muslims were all slaughtered by these clowns. Filipinos, Americans, people from all over the world were killed. Europeans, they're taken hostage. Some are still hostage now. And Donald Trump ended all that and brought peace to the Middle East. And Joe Biden dorked it all up in just a matter of months. With his ignorance, his stupidity, his absent-mindedness, his blank mind. And this is the world that Donald Trump inherits. He's only been president for 3 months, so whatever's happening in Israel now, he may be a staunch supporter of Israel, but it's hard to blame him for it. He's walked into a hornet's nest that he has to try to clean up now. And it's very unfair, but you know, when you're a leader, you get handed the keys, you're responsible. I mean, you know, if you're in the middle of a battle and things are going badly, just because you just became a man, you can't go, well, I didn't mess it up. It's not my problem. You're the leader, it's your problem. So it's Donald Trump's problem, and he's got to try to find a way to sort it out. But make no mistake, Trump will remain a staunch supporter of Israel in this conflict. And even Biden was a staunch supporter of Israel. The United States has been a staunch supporter of Israel since its creation in 1948. Supported it all along. Whether that's right or wrong isn't for me to say. It's just a reality.
Yeah, it was reported late yesterday that the Houthis and the Americans are now sort of
That was weird.
on a bit of peace. All of a sudden the Houthis say, well, if you don't bomb us, then we won't fire at your ships. But then as an afternote, they stated, but we will still attack Israel. But Donald Trump has actually reached his goal. He wants to pass the ships. He wants to pass American ships and American naval ships without everybody firing at them when they pass. And he was successful with that.
That's true, and actually Trump can be successful against the Houthis too. We just armed the Israelis to attack them.
You talked about Greenland. You know, we still have to talk about Canada, because Atlanta now.
The 51st state?
51st state. But Atlanta now got a, what does you call it, when people get vote on something?
Referendum?
Ek moet nou sê 'n petisie, maar is nie 'n petisie nie.
Referendum?
A referendum, yes. To dislodge themselves from Canada and becoming part of the United States.
Oh, Alberta,
Alberta, yes.
I heard Atlanta, Alberta.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
no, that's
my
good.
English.
No, I understand it's self-defense. So, yeah, no, Alberta, that's good news for America. I mean, there's some great wheat fields up there. It's full of oil. We love that. Canadians in Alberta, they got their cowboy show out there every year. It's pretty nice, and some beautiful parks. You know, that would be interesting. That would be a problem for Canada because it would split it in two.
Yeah, I haven't studied the recent visit of the new Canadian Premier to Donald Trump, but he was fairly meek and wild with Donald Trump after what he said in Canada. But I don't know what the results of all those negotiations were, in fact. But yeah, just for Canada. What's the next one?
The next one for what?
For Donald Trump, Greenland.
Oh, and Canada, Panama.
Panama?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You want me to talk about that? You want me to talk about Panama?
Of course.
Okay, sure.
If I mentioned something, you must
Just talk about it, okay. Well, I was waiting for the shoe to drop for the next one, okay. So Panama, yeah, so, and I'll just kind of put this together with the thing with tariffs. So when we were talking about tariffs, a lot of people are trying to understand what Trump's doing with tariffs. So if you look at Donald Trump and study him as a person, and he's been a public figure for decades, he wrote a book back in the 1980s as a successful businessman called The Art of the Deal. Some of you might have read that book. If you read that book and understand it, and you look at what Trump has done in his career as a businessman and then as a politician, he's a very transactional person. This for that, this for that, I want this for that. He'll work with people whether he likes them or not, as long as he can work a deal. It's all about the deal, the art of the deal, to steal the title from this book. So, what's the purpose of the tariffs? Well, one of the purposes of tariffs is to achieve an end state, an end goal. It's not simply to punish a country and take money from them. So the three things we just talked about, Greenland, Denmark would do nothing. One thing that you probably didn't know is that when Trump threatened to invade Greenland, he also told Denmark that he would be applying, I think, 30 or 40% tariffs on all the goods from Denmark. And that's when they decided to commit money. And so that discussion disappeared. So they're also facing tariffs because they're part of the European Union now. But Denmark backed down because of the threat of tariffs. Panama was allowing the Chinese...
But just before that,
Okay.
the importance of Greenland and the northern part of Canada in the Arctic Sea route.
Sure. So because of climate conditions at this stage of history, because climate changes over history, the Arctic Sea in the summertime is now ice-free for parts of it. And that hasn't been the case in human history that we know of. So you can actually pass ships through there. The Arctic Sea is full of a wealth of minerals, rare earths, oil, natural gas, all sorts of things, plus fish and other resources that everyone wants to get their hands on. And it's a great place to put submarines under the water and launch ballistic missiles at Canada or the United States. And who might have ballistic missiles to fire? China and Russia. And who has evil intention towards the United States, from our perspective? China and Russia. Both of which are sniffing around the Arctic and sending ships and icebreakers through there. And unfortunately, the United States only has one icebreaker. It's very embarrassing. We only have one in service right now. The Russians and Chinese are going through there. And that's why it was so important to get Denmark to start patrolling the sea lanes. Donald Trump has got a very strategic vision. You know this because I've heard you talk about it in Afrikaans and in English. You talk about these lines of communication: the Panama Canal, Southern Africa, Suez, and of course the Arctic Sea. These are all critical points that must have some kind of observation at a minimum or degree of control to ensure the sea lanes remain open for global commerce in our national security and frankly in your interest too. So the Arctic Sea, that's why the Arctic Sea is so important, that's why the Greenland thing is so important. It's not just Donald Trump has lost his mind, he wants to buy Greenland. There is a strategic reason for that whole situation. The same with the Panama Canal. Panama Canal was built, the land was bought from Panama. It bifurcated, divided Panama into two separate geographic parts, and we had America in the middle. That was our soil, part of our country. Sorry for Panama, but their leader sold it to us over 100 years ago. We bought it to build the canal. We built the canal, over 30,000 Americans lost their lives building that canal. True. Malaria, tropical diseases, accidents, 30,000 Americans died building that canal. Jimmy Carter gave it to Panama for $1 in 1979. So the deal was our Navy was supposed to be able to pass through there free. They've begun charging our Navy to go through there, and they're charging excessive rates to American shipping. But more importantly, the Chinese, in their Belt Road Initiative, got involved in negotiating for control of the Panama Canal zone. Trump said, nope, not going to happen, not on my watch. So he threatened tariffs against Panama. The Chinese are no longer involved in the Panama Canal. They're not getting the contract. That's the result he wanted. And then the third one, I'll just throw this one in about the tariffs real quickly, along those lines. Trying to achieve something. You might have seen this on the news. So we sent a military plane to Colombia with criminal alien invaders, convicted murderers, rapists, and pedophiles that were in our prisons that are Colombian citizens. and Trump said they're out of here, they're here illegally, we're sending them back. They allowed our plane to fly there. Just before it landed, the Colombian president said, oh, no, this is insulting to Colombia, we're not going to take these people back. So the pilots turned around and called on the satellite phone to the White House, or to the Pentagon called the White House. And then President Trump was on the golf course and pulls out his mobile, 25% tariffs today, 50% next week, 100% the week after that. Within 1 hour, the Colombian president had rescinded his statement. The military plane turned around, went to Colombia, landed, dropped off the 100+ criminals, and then the president sent his private jet to the States to pick up more criminals. So the purpose of tariffs is to achieve an end, to achieve something. And Trump wants something from everybody, whether it's a fair deal. And one more example is Europe charges American car manufacturers 10%. Every car goes there as a 10% tariff, plus the VAT. We don't have that. There's no value-added tax in America. Some states have sales tax, which is different, but nobody has 10, 15, or 20% VAT. Nothing like that. So an American Mustang or Corvette sold in Europe costs as much as 35% more. Their cars come to America with 2.5% tariff. Now, how is that fair? It's not. That's the sort of thing Trump is trying to fix with tariffs.
I heard something about that.
Yes.
That if you buy an American car in the United States now, say Ford or Chevy, or one of those companies for those cars, they are giving you $25,000.
I haven't heard that. Which car now? I'm going to get one of those.
I read it today.
All right, when this is over, we're going to check out this ad.
It's an incentive to the Americans to buy American-built cars.
Oh, okay. So maybe you're talking about Ford. Ford has offered employee discounts. So Ford Motor Corporation, which is an American company, is offering. So they're clever. Right now, there's a 25% tariff slapped on automobiles imported. So American-made cars already have an advantage right now. Ford is going, you know what? Now is the time to increase our market share. We'll get people to buy Fords. They're already going to pay 25% more to buy a Lexus or a Toyota or a BMW. How about we give them all our employee discount, which means that they save like $10,000 or $20,000 depending on the expense of the car. So Ford is brilliant. They will increase their market share at the expense of all these foreign manufacturers. And once people get accustomed to a car brand, it's difficult for them to change. A lot of times people only change out of necessity. You know, for instance, I liked Hondas for a long time. They were very good cars until I had a very bad experience and never with the car dealer and never bought another one. And also like Toyotas. So a lot of people are loyal to brands, and if you're smart, you take advantage of it. And I think that's maybe what you're talking about, because Ford is offering employee discounts. So a Ford car today, with tariffs applied to America, everyone keeps talking, well, the tariffs, that's a tax on Americans. But tariffs don't necessarily mean a tax. Let me explain why. There's 3 outcomes. If, and this is a good one with cars, if a 10% tariff, throw that out there, okay, on cars coming in. Well, if a company wants to maintain market share, in other words, if they sell 10% of the cars in the country and they don't want to lose that share because of the tariffs, they might eat the cost of the tariff. In other words, the car company will pay that tariff so you don't have to, because we want you to remain a Toyota buyer. Because if you don't remain a Toyota buyer, you can buy someone else who may never come back. And it costs hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising to lure you back. So they'll eat the tariff. Now, if the tariff is larger, say 20%, they might eat half of it so that your prices don't rise so much. And then you pay 10% more instead of 20%. Or you have to pay the whole thing. So when people tell you it's a tax on Americans, that's not entirely a true statement. It might be one of the 3 outcomes there. I think I got off track. Did I answer the question?
You did, but you said something about the rising temperatures. Okay. We all know this thing about climate change. I think in South Africa is also a lot of crazy guys who is fixated on climate change, earth warming. I read this afternoon that the scientists have now found that in Antarctica, over the last 2 years, 108 billion tons of ice was added to the ice shelf.
Yeah.
Where's the earthworm?
So you read that this afternoon,
Yes.
and you read the other things. Now I know why he sent us to the falls. So why would we be caught off guard with all these questions like, because we didn't get to read the news today, Rob. I see how this works, okay. Next time I'll be ready for this. No, but seriously.
Now, Francis asked me this afternoon, what are you going to do? I said, I better check up with the to prepare for tonight. No, but it's true. It's just a scientist statement there. 108 billion tons of ice added to the Antarctic
ice
shelf
Yeah.
over the last 2 years alone.
And they can't explain it.
No, they can't. Because everybody was shouting climate change, and Donald Trump also said it's a bloody hoax. I've always said it.
But that is climate change, you got cold.
Well,
Right?
it sort of shows something here. What is your time?
Yes.
Okay guys, we are going to take a quick break and Rob will call you back, but it will be within smile for the camera. I'm not really, but okay. Excellent. Just keep notes. Is everybody back from the bathrooms, the pubs, everywhere?
Billy's here, so we're ready.
Yeah, the old parabats. We have to bear with them, you know. But we are bearing with you willingly, Willie. Okay. Yes, I'm going to talk to you right now. A guy with the name of Dr. Gregory Stanton. Why are you laughing?
Listen this morning to your...
Yeah, Dr. Gregory Stanton made a comment that, and he's with Genocide Watch. And he used to be an anti-apartheid activist. So he's not definitely more pro the ANC of old or who else. He made a statement and he said that, well, South Africa was at stage 7 out of 10 in a genocide situation. He said, but now with the land issue, we have moved to stage 8. And stage 10 is actually the reconciliation stage after genocide, which means we are one stage away from genocide. Now this is a broad statement, a broad thing that I'm telling you about, you know. When Donald Trump made his announcements about South Africa, and to start off with, there's bad things happening in South Africa. I can't find the right word, but the land issue, the taking of the land without compensation. What is the right word?
Confiscation. He said confiscation.
Expropriation. That's a nice word to remember.
Without compensation.
Expropriation without compensation. Yes, he said that moved us into stage 8, which means the next stage is genocide. Now this guy predicted the Rwandan genocide, the Burundi one, and they studied genocides from the Second World War, the Holocaust, and lots of countries afterwards, and they're all following the same stages. We are at that stage, in stage 8 now. Now Donald Trump started off by saying bad things are happening in South Africa, this expropriation of land without compensation, and then he said, well, your DEI policies don't add up, which is in fact BBEE, and then as an afterthought, and your foreign affairs policy don't align with that of the United States in respect of Israel, Hamas, Palestine, Iran, and then of course he said China. I'm not going to bring Russia in because he didn't mention Russia, but there's a comeback on that one. You are traveling through the world, have been about everywhere, and you have given special attention and focus to South Africa. You can't answer all this in one,
I'll try.
but you surely, I saw a video of you the other day, and I don't actually watch your videos because staring at the ugly face is very difficult sometimes.
So I have a question for you. Why are you looking at a mirror when you're watching my videos?
No, good one. Well, I thought it was my TV screen. But anyway, and you say, the temperature has risen.
Yes, it has. It has. So, yeah, the temperature has risen. So, I've been coming to South Africa for going on 30 years, and I've noticed quite a difference just from a year ago. So, I mean, I can look back to when I first started coming back to South Africa after the COVID scam expired in 2022. And we did the event here in Uppington, and I travel around the country. So this is my 5th trip back since then. Each time I can see the decline in infrastructure, from the railroads, the tracks stolen, the communication lines robbed, the overhead power lines gone, potholes, you know, you drive on what's left of the road, not left or right. And so ESCOM, I've been a victim of load shedding so many times, I deserve South African citizenship. So, I mean, I've seen this every time, and it's clear that decline is taking place. What I have not seen previously is antagonistic relations between South Africans, specifically different ethnic groups. So this time, I've had many people come up to me and tell me things. Now I have not experienced a bad experience. Okay? I've not had a bad experience. White South Africans, Afrikaners, English, you know, those guys over here. Anyway, Afrikaners, English, Portuguese, South Africans, Zulu, whom I know, Xhosa, whom I've met, Coloreds, Indians, it doesn't matter. Everyone has treated me very well in this country. Maybe they just don't want a video made about them that's bad, so that's why. No, but seriously, I've had a good experience, but then I'm passing through. I'm not living here on a day-to-day basis. But this time, I've had an overwhelming number of people come to meet and greets. I'm approaching 800 people have come to meet and greets. If I were technically to count our conversation tonight, we'd be pushing 1,000 now. It'd be interesting. But that's actually almost more than voted for me in my election. So I'm doing better in South Africa than I did in Pennsylvania. Maybe I should run for office here. But I've had several people come up to me, including in the Western Cape. Rather shocking comments. One of which, I don't want to get graphic, but so I'll leave the graphic stories out because you can imagine the horrific things that have happened to people. But a lady came up to me in Blouberg, as I say, Bloubergstrand in the West Coast. We had a meet and greet at the Kapstadt Brauhaus, and afterwards she talked to me privately, and she said, "It's getting a little scary." I said, "What do you mean?" Well, I was in the Pick and Pay or Checkers parking lot, doesn't matter, one of the grocery stores. She walked to the car a couple days prior, and a gentleman came over to her, a black gentleman, and said, "Give me your keys." He wasn't robbing her. He was trying to intimidate her. She's got her infant in her arms. She says, "What do you mean? Give me your keys. Why don't you fuck off to America? Aren't you a refugee?" I mean, if this is happening in the Western Cape, that's one case. I've heard other stories similar to that in Gauteng and other places. If this is the way that some people are behaving, then that's unacceptable. And that's just one example of the temperature has risen. We've got all kinds of these anecdotal stories happening all over the country. Some evil people feel empowered as a consequence of the actions of the current government. Expropriation without compensation, giving them the authority in their minds to behave like fools. And it's a very dangerous mix. You talk about genocide. It's a topic that I haven't rubbished the topic, but I most often hear that term used by the leftist media and by leftist commentators whenever they want to diminish the death of white South Africans in particular, but South Africans in general. So I've never used the term. However, on that scale that's been identified for genocide, the stages that get to genocide, I will say this. The people living in the Belgian Congo had no idea what fate awaited them when things changed overnight. And the horrors that have occurred, particularly in the eastern part, which is now the Kivu's, the slaughter of Catholic nuns, the dismemberment and people eating them, and then the horrible other things that happen around the country, happened almost overnight with no warning. Now, I'm not trying to be a Cassandra and say that South Africa's going that direction. I pray that that's not the case. I don't want to see that ever. This is an amazing country. But if things are ratcheting up to a level where analysts are saying we're reaching a stage where such a thing is possible, it's not that far off, that's a bit frightening. And to me, to hear people in the Western Cape tell me stories like that, that's odd. I mean, I go to Kailicha. I mean, I go to the Cape Flats. I mean, I don't advise most people to go there, but I mean, I can take care of myself. At least I think I can. And I go to Monenberg, another dodgy part of Cape Town. But my point is, I'm hearing these stories from people. And many of my black South African friends, who are Tswana, Xhosa, Zulu, primarily, have gone very quiet. Not because they don't have affinity for white South Africans or brown South Africans, but some of them are very scared themselves about the current environment. And instead of being vocal like they were 2 or 3 or a year ago, suddenly they've gone very quiet and they're not speaking up because they're concerned about their own safety, being called coconuts, just because they believe that people should be treated equal and their jobs being threatened. That to me is a very scary situation. We've had people, we said we're not going to talk about the refugee program, but I've had people come into my chat on my program and claim that they've been suspended from work by their boss because their boss found out they'd expressed interest in the refugee program. I don't know if that's true or not, but if it is,
What program?
the refugee program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know if that's true, but if it is, it's morally and legally irresponsible. So the point is the temperature, in my view, as an outside observer, has risen. I don't know how it feels in Uppington. I haven't felt it here, but I've been here briefly. But I can tell you the Western Cape, in KZN, and in Gauteng, it definitely feels a lot warmer and a lot scarier for people. And that's just kind of, that's how it's going right now. I would hope that adults would step into the room in the political arena and lower the temperature, but we're not seeing that. Hopefully that will happen. But in the meantime, I think that people just need to be alert because the temperature has risen. I don't know about here in the Northern Cape, but in the rest of the country I see it.
Well, December was very hot here.
I knew that was coming. He set me up. He asked me if the temperature rising. I could have answered easily. I heard it was 40 degrees. That's
Well, we have been talking about climate change, you know. That is exactly what has happened to me, by the way.
Really?
Not the heat, but when I was out in the Congo, farming there,
Yes.
the first time I came back to South Africa was after 2 years of the farm in the Congo. I immediately picked up the change in the wine.
From 2 years prior.
Yes. I always said if people really want to experience the change that you are talking about now, they have to leave the country actually for a month or 2 or 3, and when you come back you will immediately pick it up because it's not the same as when you left it. But and currently, partly because of what Donald Trump has said about South Africa, the fact that the guys went to Washington, Hierdie, and
After for solidarity.
no, that guy, I can't remember him. No, the other guy. At the embassy in Pretoria. Willem Petzer. Yes. They have talked there, but after that, and Ernst Roos, who went to talk to Tucker Carlson and now the Jordan Peterson in Canada, we have seen a much more excuse me, but I will not but my sommige hoeveelheid vragen.
We'll edit that
But anyway, temperatures has been rising, and in certain circumstances it has been committed for that. The one guy, even Roland Schoeman, the Olympic swimmer, he has joined the States, fighting a backgevecht, what does you call it in English? When you a clash of words. Backgevecht and Afrikaans, but anyway, even he joined that. And then people have started doing certain things. And we have seen how many times the Brackenfell incident where the EFF walked out the school. Okay, they got to the rule there. And there's a couple of other incidents. But then, Grobler's down happened. And this guy's got locked up. TB, Willem Petzer, Divan, and Francois Panama, they got locked up. But the interesting part of it, they did not get bail, and they had to sit there for almost 2 weeks before they got bail, which caused a lot of more tension, more polarization on the side, to the point where people feel, but we as a minority don't have the right to express how we feel in South Africa. But with reference to Grobler's Dam, what was your take on that?
Well, that was, look, my take on the no bail thing is that was wrong. I mean, that's not how things are supposed to be done. It's interesting, Senegal, the accused were given a bail hearing pretty quickly. We know how that went, and then there was another Senegal event. But for those guys to be locked up without bail, I mean, this is a tactic that's often used by judicial systems illegitimately to punish people, to threaten them, to intimidate them. And that's what my take on it was. It was meant to intimidate them to shut up and be quiet. So, you know, typically you have a lot of places where people be arrested on a Friday, and there's no judge available to grant bail until Monday. So I don't know what the excuse was in this case, but I found it reprehensible that happened, and it was done intentionally in my view, and in flouting the law. That's not. I don't know the time frame that you have to charge someone or give them a bail hearing, but it's not 2 weeks in America. It's a lot quicker than that. You know, it's a little disappointing, and to the point, you know, recently. Not everybody likes him. Some people dislike him. Some people love him. But I mean, that's kind of the way it is with anybody who's in the public eye. But Rob Hersoff went on the DJ Sabu podcast, and he was sitting across from Canal, Black Pen. And Rob Hersoff said something very significant, and I'm going to use his words and paraphrase him. And he pointed, he said, you know, for 30 years, you guys, he's talking about black South Africans, commentators, have been able to say what you want to say. And we haven't been able to say anything. That ends now. Now it's different times. Now, Grobler's style may not have made it feel that way, but my point is that you have rights under the Constitution. I've read the South African Constitution. There are certain things you can't say. You can't shout fire in a crowded theater. You're engaged in public safety. But you have a right to speak your mind, especially if you're not harming someone else. And you should never feel intimidated to not have your rights there. But what happened to those gentlemen, I think, was an effort to silence people. And that was the intent, to intimidate people, and that's just wrong. And look, it's not exclusive to South Africa. We've had that happen in America from time to time, people flying the wall. But the good news for us is we usually have recourse. We can deal with the people who are the transgressors. And so, but South Africa, I'm not really sure what your recourse is, except for the world to notice it, and for Trump to pay attention and maybe start spanking some people.
It reminds me, you know, I always thought South Africa was the world champion with corruption. But now I believe the United States is the world champion with corruption.
How so?
How
so?
Everything that has happened there and all
the past years.
But okay, we are finished with that part. I couldn't let it slide.
You know, he said something. Okay, it's time for this one. Okay. So, because he's picking on me. You notice that he's picking on me. And if I was a lieutenant colonel, I'd have to take it. But I'm a colonel, so I don't have to take it, okay? So, yesterday, we were at the Bride, and he mentioned the recent exponential growth in my number of subscribers. And he said, you know, I'm actually kind of jealous. That's what he said. He admitted it. He said, but you know, jealousy is a dangerous thing. He was trying to intimidate me.
That's why I said to Rob before you left this morning, don't let him return.
And I should have been wise to what was going on when Rob so eagerly took my passport. Anyway, next question.
No, yeah. A lot of the questions is coming through. We have actually, to a large extent, discussed already.
Okay, cool.
There's one guy, the fake news media. He wants to know what's your opinion about News 24, Marula Media, and all this outlets in South Africa. But I think we have actually said that you can't trust the media. A thought on that.
Oh, absolutely. So, one of the reasons why my subscriber growth has grown and why people watch my content is that I am honest with people and I give you the receipts. If I tell you something, I tell you where the data came from. Unless it's a protected source, you understand that sometimes to protect people's employment of their lives, you can't share it. But most of the data I take and most of the news that I deal with is something the media has reported on falsely. They've told a story, and instead of reporting the news, they've given their opinion and disguised it as news. And a lot of people don't pick up on that. But after 30 years as an intelligence analyst, I tend to pick up on those things. My experience has led me to understand people's intentions and where people are trying to mislead. And I mean, you know, one of the things I do is interview people and interrogate people, and you know, you pick up on when people are lying. And it's the same thing when you're reading things you pick up on or watch newscasts. So it's actually been beneficial for me that I can take the news by reading News 24, IOL, Daily Maverick, Mail and Guardian, New York Times, Washington Post, Der Spiegel, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. So I do read the news every day in English, German, French, and Afrikaans as best I can, because that's usually the bottom. But I read all of those languages and pull news stories, but I report the news in English most of the time, because when I start speaking German, I just confuse people. They think I'm a drunken Afrikaner. Or they think I'm from Namibia. So, anyway, but it's been a boon for me because I want people to think, and I want people to think critically. Not to be critical, you know, saying I have an ugly face is being critical. But thinking critically to why do people tell you things? What's the purpose of reporting this? And why did they say this? And so that's a big part of what I do. Almost all of the media that we consume around the world that's traditional, legacy media, as I would call it, newspapers, magazines, television stations, they're all full of crap. I mean, they all try to push a narrative and they all use clickbait. You know, boom, this is what happened. When that isn't really what happened. And the real truth is further down. They used to say below the fold in the newspaper. You know, they put the spicy headline here, but the news is down here. So it's frustrating, but I can say that there are efforts in the non-traditional media, in social media, for instance. A lot of commentators in America have been fighting back against this. And now in South Africa there's an effort, which it's no state secret anymore. I'm involved in this, the Truth Report. Rob Hersoff is a part of that as well. And this is taking content creators who are on social media, who are centrist or center-right, and giving them a platform where their opinions and their analysis will be there for you to view. You'll be able to rate it, you believe it, is it left, is it right, and give feedback on it. And there's much more. There'll be a wire service with the news and things. That won't change things in South Africa, but maybe it will give people an alternative, and you can take it or leave it if you like. But you know, the media is very frustrating. The behavior recently of Kyle Cowan in News 24 in doxing a private citizen who committed no crime, was not the subject of a criminal investigation, and he outed him. He, his children, his family received death threats. His business is on the verge of collapse. The lodge he has. He's been smeared, he's been slandered, he's been libeled. And what do we get? Crickets from the press ombudsman. We get no announcement of any criminal investigation into the violation of the Poppy Act. This is a caustic dangerous media that does this to harm and silence civilians, citizens. The purpose of the media is to inform and to hold the government accountable. The media is called the fourth estate, after the monarchies and the royalty and they've got bureaucracy. They're the fourth estate. They're not part of the government. They're supposed to hold the government accountable. And media the world over have not held government accountable. Why am I virtually the only one still complaining about Pala Pala? Have you heard a story about Pala Pala in any of the media sources in South Africa recently?
Yes.
You have? No, you haven't. Okay, for the most part. And why do I say that? Well, the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, was declared to have not committed an ethics violation in Parliament. Because after all, he's also a member of Parliament. I don't buy that at all. I don't know how he didn't commit an ethics violation. But what about the criminal prosecution for the perversion of means of justice, for currency violations, for witness tampering, for supposedly torturing people, things like that? Where is the investigation for that? Where is the media holding the government to account for Doctors Wynand and Ietsie, who the Hawks found guilty? They're not a court, but the evidence indicates he's guilty of corruption in the digital vibe scandal. He's still a member of Parliament, collecting a salary. How are such things possible? The media are supposed to deal with that. Instead, they're outing a private citizen because they don't like what he says and destroying his life. And then they take a 15-year-old video that Ronaldo Goos recorded as a young man trying to make a statement because he was an angry young man who couldn't find work because of his skin color. And so he made a statement. What if you were told this? How would you feel based on your skin color? And then they edit that and they clip that, and they're trying to bankrupt him now. The South African Human Rights Commission is still taking the court, while Nota B'Oye said unbelievably horrible things about white people, including driving people in the sea, and maybe it was hyperbole, but he got a free pass. He just had to give an apology on air. And Knobs and Kesey assaults a woman and a flight crew on a flight, colored ladies, calling them names. Where's this at? The role of the media is to hold the government accountable, not to target citizens. The media in this country is corrupt, and they're targeting citizens and misleading you. And it's not just here. It's also, around the world. It's not as bad in America, but we also have problems with our media. So you can believe what you want to believe. You don't have to believe anything I tell you. I'll tell you where to go to find the information. You can analyze it for yourself. What I do is highlight what's wrong with the news and try to inform you with actual stories and let you decide for yourself. And if people like it, that's great. If they don't like it, there's 10 million other YouTube channels and other sources of news, and that's how I look at it. So yes, it's a shame that the media can't be trusted, but they can't be trusted. The world over. Fox News can't be trusted. Some of you might like Fox News. I don't trust them for a second. They push the narrative that they want to push. When Donald Trump ran for office in 2016, he wasn't my candidate. I wound up voting for him in the election because he was the best candidate, but he was my candidate in the primaries. I wanted Ted Cruz to win. But every time Ted Cruz was speaking, Donald Trump went to the bathroom. Oh, Donald Trump's in the bathroom. Every news station. They went to Donald Trump. That's not news, that's sensationalism. So I don't trust the media, and I find it sad that we've reached that stage, but that's the world we're in.
Just more or less 20 years ago, I was lucky enough to marry Frances. 20 years. Can you believe it?
She doesn't look like you got married 20 years ago. You do.
You must remember who is the boss. Coming to the media, a report those days contacted me and asked me if they could do an article about it, and a guy with the name of Lucas Meyer, he rocked up at our house to talk about us, and I took a couple of photographs. But then the headlines read, Ou Bok kies jong blad. You understand that?
Yeah, an old buck has kissed a young blonde. I got it.
But to me it was sort of a slap in the face. The rest of the article was very nice, but Ou Bok choosing young blood. So by just changing the headline of an article, of a story, changes the perspective of what the people think that reads it.
100%, and that's my point.
Yeah, and I'm not a fucking old book.
Well, we'll take your word for that.
there's just more papers coming. Listen, this person is asking two questions, and it's a good one. First, or a difficult one.
Okay.
Firstly, he said, what is your opinion about the South African government who have in the international court in Den Haag laid genocide claims against Israel? There's the one. And then the next one, he said, do you support Rob? That's the difficult one.
I don't think it's difficult. So let me address the first one. The first one with South Africa's government taking Israel to the International Court of Justice for genocide. I think it's hogwash. First off, what Israel is doing doesn't meet the definition of a genocide, number one, so the case has no legitimacy. What is happening is horrific. People are dying, civilians are dying in large numbers, and that's horrific. It should never happen. But Israel acted in self-defense. It's a question of proportionality, which is part of the concept of the law of land warfare. And that's a legitimate question. Proportionality is not a genocide question. And that's a question they can raise. As far as that particular case, the problem I have with that is the following. When the Gambia went to the International Court of Justice in the historic first time ever instance, the precedent of taking a country to the court for genocide, they took Myanmar. Now the Gambia is here in West Africa, Myanmar is in Southeast Asia, former Burma. They took them to the court for the genocide of the Rohingya Muslims. Did South Africa's government sign up as a friend of that case? Did they file an amicus brief as a friend of the court? No, they didn't participate at all. The Gambia, an African state, took the courageous step of taking another country to the court for genocide. The ANC and the government of South Africa nowhere to be found. So when Rwanda happened, not to be fair, it was 94, so really I shouldn't blame the ANC for this, but let's go back to Tigray a couple years ago, when the Ethiopian army committed war crimes by executing conscripts from the Tigrayan forces by shooting them in the back of the head. We have the video, by the way, multiple videos of this. Did the South African government go to the International Court of Justice against Sudan? No. Did the South African government go to the court over China's genocide against the Uyghur Muslims in China? No. Did the South African government, you get the picture here, right? They have never expressed an interest in genocide or stopping a genocide or a purported genocide in any country in the world until after Naledi Pandor came back from Tehran. You can draw whatever lines and conclusions you want from that. So that's the first question. Do I support Rob Hersov? Rob's got a lot of money. I don't, so I think he can pay his own bills. I think the question is maybe what are my thoughts on Rob Hersov?
Yeah, but you know, Rob has actually made quite a lot of claims on social media, business deals, in his videos, and he is attacking the ANC government really head on, very strongly against the government. I had a meeting with Rob 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Yeah, down in Cape Town, we flew down and we had a meeting. But it's not about my opinion at this stage concerning Rob. I got a very specific idea. I think that Rob might be misleading some people in South Africa with those attitudes, this aggressive attitude, that he got perhaps different plans, that's what he is portraying, and then there is, of course, this whole thought based that Robert Hersov came back from London with a mission so that he can be put in a place of power by the forces behind everything, but we can talk later about that. But the thing is, what Rob is saying from my side, he's saying the right things, it is fine. And I can't speculate on what his real purpose of what he's saying is. But at the moment, at least, it is it is contributing to the effort that Donald Trump has started by pointing out, okay, bear with me, I'm going a little bit further. AfriForum Solidariteit flew over to the United States. I said in a video one morning, and you can go and look at the videos, I said, they are not going to see Donald Trump. What they will do is they will stand in front of the White House and they will take pictures of themselves and tell us how much they have, how much success they have had. And the first photos came out, and there they were standing in front of the White House with all the fence behind them, telling everybody of their success. But they never once mentioned who they spoke to. Interesting thing. So if you look at that scenario, we look at the Aaron's Roots that gone over, Tucker Carlson, Jordan Peterson, we have talked actually about it, and then the guys at the embassy has put a lot of pressure and anger the government. So in a certain sense, what Rob Hershoff is saying is supporting this idea that, listen, we are being maltreated by our government. So it still serves a purpose. And I think it's too early to try and work out if we got any motives on this situation. So
Okay, so from
that's
this,
added there. Yeah.
okay, so I tried to interview Rob Hershoff a couple years ago. Someone gave me his number, he responded, it never really panned out, and you know, if people lose interest or they get busy, I don't pester them for interviews. I don't pay my guests. If they want to be on my program and let people hear what they got to say, then they're welcome, come on. Same thing happened with Odez, and you know, it just never happened sort of thing. So, I mean, I don't chase down interviews. I try to get one and then I don't chase it down. So, out of the blue, I heard from Rob earlier this year. And this is just before my channel started blowing up. It was actually just started blowing up, and then he came like a couple days after I started picking up a lot of subscribers. And he said, I want to come on your channel. And I said, sure. And actually I said, when? He said, today. So I rearranged my schedule very quickly. I mean, you know, he's a known person, he's an entity, so let's see what he's got to say. So I had him on, it was like a conversation. And then he said he'd be happy to come back anytime. So people wanted him to come back. I had him come back a few weeks later, talk about some other topics. And then I got a message from Rob, or not even from Rob, I got it from somebody else, in which I was put in a WhatsApp group, and it was a new WhatsApp group. And I suddenly realized it was something different, and it was this truth report, this media company that Rob was involved in. I was one of the early people asked to come into it, and at this stage, everybody that's involved in this company, or this media platform, is South African, except me. I'm the only one that's not South African, to my knowledge. So Rob Hershoff is involved in this, he's announced it. Also, I need to say, in interest of full disclosure, that Rob did a video recently in which he suggested to President Trump that President Trump appoint a special envoy for minority rights in South Africa, and the first person he mentioned that should be the ambassador would be me. So I don't owe Rob anything, I'm just being honest about, you know, so my relationship with Rob is this, is that he asked me to participate in the Truth Report, I investigated, it seems like a good project, I'm going to participate in it, and he invited me to spend Easter with him and his family, which I did on the west coast of South Africa. I found it to be my first time meeting in person, it was very personable. And he also made a promise about something, which I'm not really want to talk right now, that he actually followed through on and had no obligation to do it. So from that standpoint, my limited engagement with him, he's been a person that's followed through on the promises he's made. And I don't know of any hidden objectives, and I don't have any basis for judging that. But then my relationship with Rob Hershoff is a short one, it's new. So that's kind of where it's at. So I don't know if that answers the question that was asked, but that's what I can say. I found him to be very engaging. Rob Hershoff is 64 years old. You know, not as old as Trump, but at some point in life, many of us realize we have a clock. It's ticking. There's only so many hours on that clock. And what do we want to be remembered for? What do we want to accomplish in this world when we leave?
64.
64?
That's bloody old.
Aren't you 67?
Not allowed to say that. But
I thought you weren't an old book. No, so that's the thing with Rob Herself that I know. I have no reason to doubt him, but you know, it's I think we'll see what happens.
when Donald Trump made the announcement
Yeah.
initially that actually shocked the world, it shocked South Africa.
Did it shock you?
Yes. For the first time in 140 years, a world leader reaches out to the Afrikaner Boer nation and acknowledge their existence.
As a people. As a people.
Yeah, as a people, which was a tremendous thing, and it caused a world turmoil of thoughts and ideas and whatever. But in our constitution in 1994, which was adapted with the so-called independence that happened, there was Article 235 to the constitution that allowed for minorities to be self-governed in South Africa. And I immediately said, well, don't run to the United States and ask for, don't sanction us. Sanction the ANC. Don't run there for that. It's time to stand on the point of that resolution and the Afrikaner Accord, which was drawn up and signed before 1994, which prepares the way for the Afrikaner people to have their own state of self-determination, as you want to call it. Afrikaner stam, Bantustan. You know, that was a very ugly word during the apartheid era. But if they give us our own stam, call it a stam if you want, we are more than willing to at least get a foot in the door when it comes to that. This guy's question is about how do you see self-determination for minorities in South Africa? That's the question. And can the minority expect any form of help from the USAID? Personally, I think we already received a lot of support from the USA for the first time ever in history. But yeah, your thoughts on the self-determination?
Sure. Well, I looked at Italy. I lived in Italy for a few years in the Italian-speaking portion, which is almost all of Italy. But there's a portion of Italy where it's German-speaking. It was part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, South Tyrol, Sud Tyrol, or Alta Adige in Italian. And that is a semi-autonomous province of Italy. It has the lowest unemployment. It has the highest GDP per capita. It has the most diverse economy of industrial, agricultural, tourism, high-tech, everything across the board of all of Italy. And they pretty much rule themselves under self-autonomy, but they are part of Italy. Italy runs their foreign affairs, their foreign relations, sets national rules, but they govern themselves. And another example would be the Öland Islands, spelled Öland but pronounced Öland, off the west coast of Finland, which are 90% ethnic Swede, but they're part of Finland. From when Finland had an empire there and controlled, when Sweden had an empire there and controlled the Öland Islands. So they're 90% Swede, not Finland. 90% Swede. They are semi-autonomous, and they're actually not part of the European Union, even though Finland is in the European Union now, and they're part of Finland. These are examples of where you can have semi-autonomous states for ethnic minorities, the Swedes, the Germans, or Austrians in those cases. You could have something similar here. So it's entirely feasible. It's in your constitution. But anytime someone raises the issue, you're called a racist, which is, I think, utter garbage. No one calls the Zulu racist for having Ingelig Trust. No one says anything about that. It's the largest private holdings in South Africa, 2.8 million hectares. And I don't see them inviting many Portuguese, Afrikaners, or Xhosa to live in the Zulu Ingelig Trust. And that's their problem. That's their problem. It's like people lose their minds over Iranian. It's a private corporation. Get over yourself. I can't live there. So how's it racist? I'm not allowed to live there. That gets me out for country. So I can't live there. I don't speak off our cons well enough, and I'm not such Calvinist, and I don't like abiding by company town rules. I'm not going to live in around you. My point is that it's in the Constitution. It should be allowed. And what was the second one? Can you list?
Ja,
Ja.
can that minority group in a case like South Nation expect help from the USAID? And I mean, let's look at it two ways. One, the idea, it's an old idea that if something went wrong in South Africa, the rest of the world will come to help. You have talked about it many times. That's the one point. With the acknowledgement that we have received now, will we have any kind of support financially, for example?
So, I'm well known, for those who watch my channel for a long time, of telling you, going back to 2020, when people are like, because Trump had tweeted in 2018 about farm attacks, one tweet, and people are like, is Trump going to come save us? And I said, nobody's coming to save you. You have to save yourself, South Africa. South Africa, it's on you. You have to save yourself. The world doesn't pay attention to South Africa. But the funny thing happened on the way to the forum, as the movie line says, Donald Trump is a different person. Donald Trump is doing things unprecedented in a fashion unheard of. And I can't speak to say that we wouldn't provide assistance to people who are under pressure, especially if the balloon went up and attacks started occurring. I don't know what the answer to that is, but if it was ever going to happen, it's far more likely to happen now than at any point in the past. Bush wouldn't have done anything. Obama certainly wouldn't have done anything. Trump probably wouldn't have done anything in the first term. This is a different world. This is a different Donald Trump. Completely different. So anything is possible, but I don't know the answer on that.
I think you are quite right, because one can never know with Donald Trump what he might decide and what might he not do. But what will happen if something happens to Trump now?
Well, it's a good question. He's 78 years old, so he's not 22 anymore, so that's always a valid question. If he's incapacitated or if he dies or something like that in office, J.D. Vance assumes the presidency. J.D. Vance has shown an inclination thus far to be in line with Trump's roadmap for where we're going. Whether he follows through on that, we'd have to see. So I think he would, and I think that if Trump were no longer there, that Vance would continue this.
But he will become the president.
Oh, if Trump is incapacitated, you know, like Biden was for 4 years.
Yeah.
If Trump is incapacitated, then Vance will be sworn in. I mean, it's just like, you know, when President Reagan was shot, he was in surgery. The vice president was sworn in as the acting president while he went through the surgery because he's incapacitated. So if that would happen, it would be Vance would rise in.
In other words, broadly spoken, it will continue on the course that it is now.
I believe so. And the other piece of this too is that the next in line after the vice president is actually the Speaker of the House of Representatives, even though that's a junior body of the legislature. It's odd. So it's not. Yeah, who's a Republican and in line with Trump. So the line of succession is secure as far as the conservative agenda for America right now.
Do you think Trump and Vance travel on the same plane?
Trump and Vance in the same plane? I don't know. I think there's.
Just curious, not a question.
I don't think there's any room with Elon Musk and X on the flight. X is a little kid. You know, everywhere he goes, he's got X.
Okay.
He was a kid X.
We've got a couple of more questions, Chris, but I first want now to thought. Thanks. Say thank you to Estelle and her team, Susan and Paul and I must see the people, Dion, Sandy and Dion there. Thank you very much for the preparations and the arrangements of tonight. where you got the stage form is but it's nice. It's nice seats as well. That's why I'm talking so much. Sitting comfortably.
Too comfortable.
So thank you very much. This is great. The arrangements inside the mess hall also very great. Thank you very much for all the arrangements and all the stuff that you guys have done. We really do appreciate. And it's nice to have people around you that you don't have to guide how to do it, but will take the lead and just do it. And when I walked in here this morning to come do my final expectations, all I was asked to go and sit in this chair so that we can see if it's okay. That was my part of the arrangements. So thank you very much. Let's give them a hand. Sê weer?
Tromp nie billik kom afrig.
Appel sê ek nou jy het nie van dinge spraak as dit met kos besig is jy maar kom los daar. Die baie blou wil ondersteun soos Adrian van Wyk kan. Ek sien daar so my goeie vriend ja, kom ons los. Die bulle uit hierdie geveg. Maar nou hier kom nou so 'n bietjie van so een of twee moeilike vrae. Ek gaan hierdie een vir jou gee. Maar ek dink nie dat offisieel kan jy regtig daarop antwoord nie, want daar is nie regtig genoeg bewyse nie, maar dit gaan daaroor dat jy as 'n
It's true, I cannot answer officially. See?
well,
Be careful. Notice I didn't stop him, I just let it go.
Sorry for that one.
No, that's all right. He started it. He started it.
I didn't even notice.
I know.
But anyway, what is your as an intelligence officer?
Yeah.
In the Marines, you was an intelligence
Army,
officer.
don't insult me.
Army, okay. What this idea that is nowadays floating more and more to the surface, then the CIA and Mossad, and the combination of them probably was behind the 9/11 attacks and the 7/10 attack in Israel. I entertain it for the simple reason that the guy is leaving it here. Otherwise, I wouldn't entertain it.
Okay. So I'll
If you have an idea.
I'll attack on it. So, okay, not attack, I'll answer on it since now I'm getting tired. So I worked at the National Security Agency when, after 9/11 happened, okay? And I'm very confident that there was no conspiracy that the CIA was involved in 9/11 from my perspective. That's having worked inside the wire, and then I worked subsequently at the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I wrote for the President of the United States. I don't think there's anything to that at all. I think that's mostly conspiracy things and lots of arguments about the structural integrity of the building and who was involved. I don't buy anything from what I know. The Israel thing, there's some very strange things that happened there. First off, as military people, I think we all know, if you're military people, your main source of communication would never be a mobile telephone, would it? You're going to rely on WhatsApp to communicate, even if you didn't know better. 9/11 proved to everybody the unreliability of mobile networks when they're saturated with phone calls. They can crash, they collapse. So the early warning system for those troops that were along that border and those communities should be landline, hardwired, underground communications. That's what it should be. But according to the Israeli government, they were relying on cellular telephones to warn people. It's the first problem. If you don't have landlines, then you have HF radio or VHF radio, line of sight, omnidirectional, whichever is necessary, or microwave towers. Those can be taken out, but that is very suspicious how that went down. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and there are a lot of people now are claiming that the Israeli government or elements of the government wanted this to happen so they could obliterate Hamas. Maybe, but to me it doesn't pass a common sense test. If you want to obliterate Hamas, That's what special ops are for. You go in there and you just take out their leaders, make them headless, you know where they're at, and then you can pick them apart one by one as their leaders. That would have been my approach if I was Israelis. The Israelis, interestingly enough, the Israelis didn't come in right away. People forget that. They act like they went across the border the day after it happened. If they had set it up as a provocation, that would be more likely. They're ready, they're in position, and then they go across. I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying it seems less likely. But there are some strange things related to that attack by Hamas, those people being slaughtered, and then what's happened. But the Israelis went about, I think, almost 3 weeks before they finally invaded. But they have been very heavy-handed, and it's led to total destruction of Gaza. I'm not for or against that, I'm just taking an objective view. So I think there are some strange things that have yet to be answered, and nobody in the Israeli government's been held accountable. The intelligence chief recently resigned, but only after fighting a war for a year plus. So the jury is out in my mind on that one. Fair enough?
There's also, there might be a amount of negligence involved.
I think there is negligence. I think that's why people should be held accountable.
If you take the response of the Israeli Defense Force, as you said, 2-3 weeks before they react to what has happened, that's not a more normal Israeli reaction.
No, they usually strike.
And if they had planned something like this, they would have been ready to go in immediately.
But they weren't.
They weren't ready. You're quite right.
So I think negligence is a bigger answer.
Because this is the last question. I almost asked it in Afrikaans. Yeah. Chris, what is your name?
What is my name? It's Chris. Actually, it's William, but for those who know. But I don't use that.
I know the answer on this, but maybe you can just tell the people. There's a question here that it seems that you have an invested interest in South Africa. And to a certain extent, you have already answered this question. And then you just say, ask on why, what motivates you to be interested in the country, and but you have also said already how you experience the country at present. That's the question. Maybe you should just tell the people why you love South Africa.
Okay, well, Ronaldo Close seems to think that I've come to South Africa for the oil, but there isn't any oil, so there might be some offshore, but they won't let them do seismic testing for it, so we'll never know. While Namibia exploits their oil. So, but really, the real reason I come is for the Boermeister. And unfortunately, it's been a big mission failure. I've yet to have a Boermeister chat me up once, so I'm going to have to come up with different excuses.
Well, we got a couple here in Underwood.
Not too late tonight. No, seriously. So, why the interest in South Africa? First, I get asked this question an awful lot. And if you're honest, South Africans, Afrikaners in particular, then what else would you be but honest? That's my favorite South African phrase. If I'm honest. What else would you be? Why would you not be honest? So, if I'm honest, so I take a great interest in a lot of things. But because of the coverage on YouTube and my focus was started, and I started with South Africa when I started doing my news program, because I thought South Africa wasn't getting the attention it deserved 5 years ago. And I started doing the news to cover Africa. And the best news coverage, not the best as in quality, but the most availability for news in Africa is South Africa. When I'm trying to read newspapers in Liberia, they're difficult to reach, DRC difficult to reach, but South African media was there. So I started my news coverage in South Africa, worked around Africa, and then also through the USA and the world. So I take on all these efforts I do, whether it's rugby, or it's South Africa, or it's, Fireside, yeah. All of these, I take them on like any good soldier would do. You put all your heart and effort into it to make a difference. That's the role. That's the purpose. But why the interest specifically in South Africa? So, when I was a young man, I was living on a farm in rural Appalachia, and we had no electricity for a while. We had no plumbing, fetched water from the cistern, to wash and cook with, to shower with. And that's not fun in the wintertime when you're carrying that bucket that weighs half your weight, because I was short and skinny, and my ribs exposed, and was sloshing against my legs and frozen to my jeans by the time I got to the house. So I would go to school, and I wanted to get out of my childhood as soon as possible. So I took as many classes as I could in my first couple of years to get to the credits. And then the last couple of years I had a lot of time on my hands, so I went to the library frequently. And I look at atlases and gazetteers, and look at these postage stamp countries like San Marino, and Liechtenstein, and Andorra, and the Vatican City, and go, I want to go there, and I want to go there. I don't have any money. How am I going to get to Europe? Anyway, but I was fascinated by geography and by peoples. And so at that time, Rhodesia, Ian Smith, the Rhodesian Front were fighting their conflict against Anu and Zapu. And then you had Angola and Mozambique had already, the Carnation Revolution, it cut them loose, and the wars going on there, which some of you participated in. I found it fascinating, and it was in the news, in the magazines, I'd watch it, I'd read these things. And then I read a book by Stockdale, who worked for the CIA, talked about how the CIA interfered in Angola with Holden Roberto and the FNLA, and UNITA, and with and against the South Africans, and all the stuff they did. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. But then, by 1980, when I was in high school, I read a book by James Michener called The Covenant. And The Covenant was historical fiction. Michener was an author who would take real people, like Paul Kruger, and Jan van der Riebeck, take real historical figures and take fictional characters they created. He would interact with them here and there and weave a story and tell the history of a place so you would get to know a place. But unfortunately, he would start when the earth formed and the lava flowed. You'd have to get through a couple hundred pages before you got to the meat of the story. So anyway, but his book was 1,200 pages, 1,200 pages of fine print paperback. I still have my copy. The binding is curled like this because it's over 40 years old. And I've read it 4 times over the years. It tells the story of South Africa in a fictional perspective with real people, real events. And I read it and I'm like, now remember, this is apartheid, 1980, right? A lot of stuff going on. I read it and I said, wow, what a crazy, screwed up country full of fascinating people. What a story. Zulu, Afrikaner, the Voortrekkers, and the Xhosa and the Khoi and stuff. This is really interesting. So I started developing affinity for South Africa, specifically around 1980. In 82, I went to university and I was introduced to rugby. We didn't have a national side. I'm a history student. Who am I going to support? England? No. France? No. New Zealand? Australia? South Africa, they've got a long history, a very storied rugby history. So I became a Springbok fan in 1982. And I was immediately asked if I was a racist. And I said, it's rugby, get over yourself. So then I left the university after a year, went to the army, and was in Germany, learned German very quickly. And then once I learned German, I learned something about, and Rob, we talked about this today with Oma Katrina Zal, and we talked about this. I said, when I learned another language, I learned something about people's culture, the way the language is formed, the way they speak language. Like, if you deal with Cape Color, the colors in South Africa, many of them have an amazing sense of humor and a very magnificent way of using Afrikaans in a very specific way for very biting humor and insults, correct? Is that true? All right, so learning about people's culture gives you more insight into them. I wanted to understand why the National Party had apartheid, and I wanted to understand South Africa better. So I started self-teaching myself Afrikaans, and immediately I was asked if I was a racist. So my response was, you do realize that most people who speak this language aren't white South Africans, right? That went right over the head of most people who didn't get it. Anyway, so that's kind of where it started. I left the Army in '87, went back to university, resumed my history studies and German to learn the grammar, and I focused my history courses on Africa and Southern Africa in particular. In 1984, I was sitting in the Education Center in Bad Kreuznach, Germany, when I looked over, there was a pamphlet, and it said the Army Foreign Area Officer Program. It says, as an officer, we send you to graduate school and pay for it. We send you to language school, we pay for it. That's better. And then we send you to work in an embassy for a year, kind of as an intern. I'm like, this is really cool. But you have to wait till you're about a major to do this. You have to go up the ranks. So I decided in 1984 that I wanted to go back in the Army, become an officer, become a military intelligence officer, a regular Army officer, which there's only a few thousand, most are reservists on active duty, make full colonel, and become the defense attaché in South Africa. Every one of those things came true on a plan I made for my life in 1984. all the way to 2019, except the defense attaché in South Africa. When I got promoted to full colonel, the Africa Command gave that position to the Navy, and it's still the Navy position today. So, as an Army officer, I couldn't fill that position. So, much to my chagrin, I never became the attaché in South Africa. So, that's why the affinity for South Africa. Beyond that, Afrikaners in particular, but coloreds also, particularly groups like the Griqua and the Rehoboth Bastos and the Damara. These people are people who have much in common with America, and it's our history, your faith, your family, your flag, your language, your people, wagons, picking up and moving either north or moving west and expanding your influence and expanding your horizons, always looking over the next hill for the great adventure. South Africans and Americans have much in common, especially Afrikaners and colored South Africans with Americans, and so that's my affinity for South Africa, and I hope that explains it well.
Thanks, Gus. That's great. But you know, Afrikaans today, 100 years ago, was declared the official language. So Afrikaans is officially today 100 years old, and nou praat ek dan met jou die hele aand Engels.
And so, thank you. Not going to speak English anymore, but I do want to congratulate folks who speak Afrikaans, whatever your skin pigmentation, whatever your self-identity. Those who speak Afrikaans, it's the world's newest language. It's amazing. It's an incredible language with sources that come from Asia, from Europe, from Africa. It's a truly African language. And I congratulate you on 100 years of recognition as a real official language today, the 8th of May, 2025. Congratulations.
Yeah, Chris, now you're becoming like us. We like sitting around the campfire and talk until the sun comes up. But tonight we are not going to talk until the sun comes up, because tomorrow is a work day. Thank you so much for the discussion tonight. I think that people would listen for another 2 hours without interruption to what you have to say about not only South Africa but the rest of the world. There's so many more things that we can give attention to. But I always said, let's focus on that stuff in the world that have a direct influence on us. And I think that's what we have done tonight. And I think, because also a question that I did not give to you is, when we tell our family about the problems in South Africa, they are laughing at us. And that is happening in South Africa. People are blind. They don't see what is happening. They don't see the danger that might exist for us. And sometimes they look at us with those looking at us, where are you coming from? On what planet did you grow up? And in fact, there's very clear signs. You just have to be aware about what is going on, what is changing, what is happening, to realize it. So, to finish off, and for you to say, cheers chaps, until next time, I give you a last opportunity to say a couple of words.
Well, that's very kind of you. It's technicality to do on my program. I always give my guests a chance to get the final word in. So my final word tonight is that this is a truly amazing country. It really is, South Africa. I know that it seems very odd to say that today with all the challenges you face, but the people of South Africa, of all backgrounds and faiths, the geography of this country, the natural beauty of it, the human potential of this country is just it's really amazing. I've told people for a long time that, first off, I'm an American and I'm a proud American. I would never surrender my American citizenship. But if I had to be born again in a different citizenship, the one place I would like to be a citizen is South Africa, because of the people. And so I just want to thank you all for your interest. For those who watch my program and share it, I'm very grateful. I'm also very humble. In this trip, I've had people come up trembling to greet me, to shake my hand and to hug me. It's a really humbling experience for that to happen, for people to be that emotional and that attached to things that I share with them. And I don't take it for granted, and I don't have an ego. I joke about being devastatingly handsome, because I am. But not one laugh. I guess they think I am devastatingly handsome. Anyway, but no, I joke around about humility, but I am a humble person at heart. If you watch my program, you'll know that if you look in my studio, you don't see decorations, awards, commendations on the wall. I'm not ashamed of those things, but it's just something I don't put on my wall, because I am a humble person. I take pride in things I've achieved, and I've achieved with others. What's up?
Just don't wear that blue Bulls jersey again.
When the Bulls are not playing the Stormers, I have to wear the Bulls jersey. And I'll be at Loft this Saturday covering the game once again. So, you know, I am a humble person, and, you know, we all have a clock. And when we leave this life and move on to the afterlife or whatever comes after this, hopefully there's something. When we move on, we should be comfortable in our skins with what we've done and how we treated others. And I will tell you that I am comfortable in my skin and how I've treated others. And I hope to continue feeling that way the rest of my natural existence. And I thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Dankie julle.